Hey everyone, and welcome back to another video. So today we're going to be adding to your holiday hangover by talking about WoW, because a major Azerite rework is coming, a gameplay redesign of the open world is coming, a major villain, basically a classic WoW villain like Arthas or Illidan, is going to be coming. So today I'm going to be talking about 8.2 and how it could feel like more of an expansion than Battle for Azeroth, which itself amazingly managed to feel more like a contraction. Which was a little bit odd. Now, yeah, it's been a really rough spot for World of Warcraft. Warlords of Draenor was a bit of a bust because no matter how much you actually wanted to play it, there just wasn't enough content there. But with BfA, it seems like their rigidly planned progression and their assumptions about player behavior, they instead led to an expansion that was more niche than Legion, meaning that there absolutely is an audience who will play and enjoy BfA, but that audience is maybe not as broad as it used to be. And that's just made, left many people a bit confused about how things have went. Now, the whole thing's rather sad, but 8.2 does seem to have some good ideas behind it. Now, look, I'm in the funny place, half the time I'm called a Blizzard shill, half the time I'm a frothing YouTube hater gamer person. I'm pretty sure this video is going to support both conclusions, so to be really clear, in this video I'm going to be talking about the potential of 8.2 based on what Blizzard have talked about. Now, this patch is probably not going to be out until May, so yeah, should you be subscribed if you don't like 8.1 but think that this video sounds interesting? No, you shouldn't. 8.1 has been great for that first camp of players who are enjoying WoW right now, but for those who feel like WoW is moving further away from what they want, the patch does little. Well, 8.2 could be properly exciting. Why do I say that? Well, I'm kind of ambivalent towards 8.1, but I'm pretty interested in 8.2, so today I'm going to go through the core new feeling things of 8.2, and we're going to talk about why they felt a bit worse when BfA launched as opposed, compared to Legion, and how 8.2 might be really making a pretty decent attempt at making those things better. So we're going to kick it off with Azerite, because this really is the big one. Azerite felt rubbish on launch. The theming and the visuals of the necklace, they kind of sucked. Powering up the neck didn't really feel that satisfying. With the Azerite gear, well, it came at the expense of interesting additions to our class, and it even managed to fall short of the new ability that Legion gave us right out of the gate, and this really did lead to a bit of a bad first impression when the class gameplay just wasn't great. It kind of felt worse to play, it was a bit slower, and that slowness is expected, but it was kind of worse because there was little hope of it feeling better once you looked at the wider progression of the expansion. And then this was all punctuated by, how you were given the Azerite gear, because in Legion, you quickly farmed up and unlocked your 36 traits. That felt really good, and it was kind of satisfying because it was a reward that you knew was there, you completed it, you just did it. Well, with the Heart of Azeroth and the Azerite system, the requirements are an ever-shifting goalpost that kind of eggs you on a bit more each week, such that you rarely get the satisfaction of just completing the task you want to complete. Now, there are many problems, including boring traits and the like, that just all came together to make it feel like a contraction pack from Legion, not an expansion pack. And just from the perspective of a Legion player, didn't really feel great in comparison to how the artifacts unlocked, along with how you could choose a few, legendaries. Now, neither of those systems were perfect, but I think they were kind of better than what we have. So that's the core problem, and the lack of progression, and the problems with Azerite, the moving goalposts, the lack of meaningful additions to classes. So how does patch 8.2 answer these questions? Well, in a recent Q&A, Ian said that Season 2 Azerite gear is the last version of the current style. What does that mean? Well, that means that in patch 8.2, Azerite gear will actually have all of its rings unlocked. There'll be no unlock requirements. Yeah, if a bit of Azerite drops, you can put it on, you can select all your traits. This allows the Azerite gear to feel a bit closer to the gameplay of the older tier sets from a mechanical perspective. You'll never have to re-unlock a trait again. Now, this goes a long way to sort of counter the anti-fun moving goalposts of the current system, and it really is very welcome, especially because it's an addition to the Titan Residuum system. Now, I know that funneling, the Titan Residuum to one player for the split run crew is a bit of a problem, but for most people, I do think that Titan Residuum is a good system. Just imagine if the Legion Legendaries, was a direct purchase from patch 7.1 onwards. It would have greatly improved the quality of Legion as an expansion. Well, with Battle for Azeroth, it's going to get that, and then it's going to get the changes to Azerite in 8.2. That's going to make the Azerite gear a bit more exciting, I think. But what do you do with all your artifact power and the Heart of Azeroth? Well, that's essentially going to be something close to what I suggested a while back. Now, the Heart of Azeroth is going to have a trait tree. I assume it'll be rather like the Legion artifacts. You're going to progress through that as you gain artifact power, and I believe that this actually has the potential to add new abilities and mechanics. Ian, of course, was not specific, which is correct given the time frame that he's dealing with here, but that's something that could happen. So you could have a full set of Azerite gear with, all of the rings from 3 bits of gear. You'll have new major and minor traits from the Heart of Azeroth, and you know what, with that, you're actually approaching a Legion level of, stuff being active on your character without having to deal with legendary item RNG, which I think is really good. And then finally, I believe the Azerite trait skill with your HOA level. Now, I guess that does lead to some grinding concerns, but you know what, it just overall seems a lot better than the current system. On the whole, really a very positive change if they execute it right, and that's a change to the core of BfA. Like, the most common thing that I've heard is that content doesn't matter much if classes aren't really that fun to play and progression is frustrating. Well, this probably is a big fix of those BfA specific issues, and I think it could be enough to really be a massive positive for 8.2, and it might actually feel like more of an expansion than 8.0 did from a class mechanic and progression perspective. Next up, we've got to talk about the world, because the world of Battle for Azeroth has been quite a sticking point. Well, the content that takes place in the world itself, especially Culturass, is one of my favorites ever. Now, Legion introduced world quests. They felt fresh, but then they were pasted over to 7.2, and then to 7.3 without changes. At this stage, I think we were right back to the daily problem where they just didn't feel exciting. Now, Battle for Azeroth then wholesale copied them over, but it also killed off automated world quest group finding. Now, look, many players thought that WQGF was fun. I kind of take a different view. I think that being a thing is just a travesty of design. It's so clearly overpowered. It's such an exploitation of the cross-realm mechanics of the game. The fact that it's default is mad. Now, I don't blame players at all, and I used it heavily myself. The reason why is that doing these world quests at regular speed was just mind-numbingly boring. It took ages. So players used World Quest Group Finder as a tool to get it done faster. MMOs are so progression-oriented that it's really easy to conflate fun based on progression with fun based on the quality of content. World Quest Group Finder and a shower of rewards felt overpowered and broken. That was satisfying to players, but that's because it was sidestepping content and showering you with rewards. Now contrast that to a game where it's all about actually feeling overpowered, like Diablo 3, where you're comically powerful, but that's embraced by the design of the game and it's a part of the fun. So by the end of Legion, people didn't want to manually do world quests, but they did enjoy blasting through them super quick and blasting through the invasion points in a big World Quest Group Finder Zerk. This worked because of the inherent satisfaction of just racing through character progression in an RPG. But the world quests weren't that thrilling. So, not to be a dick, but I think that the response to the BfA world quests kind of proves my point. Once the broken power, super powerful skip was removed, they just kind of feel static and boring and not really that fun. Now, in doing this, I think that for many players that meant that the world content of BfA didn't really feel as much fun as the Legion stuff did. So how does patch 8.2 try to improve on this? Well, Blizzard talked about replayability at BlizzCon, very much saying that they're leaning into the best of many previous patches and locations, like the zone objectives of the TBC zones and the mechanics of the Timeless Isle. And it does seem like they understand, because they've said this, like they understand that just doing another zone full of world quests won't excite players. Now, what they choose to do is a mystery to us, and I've already done a full video about the potential that is there, especially given all of the honestly really cool NPC tech that they've developed for this expansion. I think for me the core of this is that Blizzard seems to know that they need to step up their world content game for 8.2, and for me that's extremely encouraging to see. They haven't been able to top the Timeless Isles in years, even though that was quite small and a first attempt at that style of content. I think what will really work is if Blizzard can just create systems that naturally encourage people to get together as a group. Perhaps, you'll have some big elite mob patrols that have nice AI. Maybe you'll have PvE capture points that in war mode are PvEVP. Some nice dynamic systems that, just have, they have player grouping happening naturally. I think that's the stuff that really makes an MMO feel sticky, really makes you want to log in and just find some people, knock out some content, and have some fun. If the world itself really feels like it's breathing, it's alive, it's got these dynamic systems that are based on what you and your friends do in the world, I think that's just super, super enticing, and it just seems to me that 8.2 might be doing a bit more of that. Next, just a quick note on progression. Battle for Azeroth progression has been minorly shredded by the rewards and the mechanics, even though as compared to Legion, like the Titan Forging is like pretty reined in and there are a few good things. Well, with 8.1 we have the greatly improved Azerite acquisition and we have a more healthy cosmetic reward progression. So for the most part, this actually means that 8.1 has set up 8.2 to really make good on those improvements and properly leverage them to have the rewards be exciting. What I would say is the Blizzard should majorly look into professions and maybe think about more varied artifact power rewards, such as from dungeons, raids, and PvP, maybe even in the various weekly chests. It's fine for islands to be really strong, but I do feel that some players think that it's overbearingly powerful, especially if they are doing a lot of raiding or dungeoning, for hours per week, and they want to, not have to go and do another thing. Now, AP rewarded you no matter what you did in Legion, and I think that was a bit less the case in BfA, and they could maybe just change course a little bit on that. Next, I want to talk about the narrative because, look, it's no secret that I've not really loved the BfA narrative, even though I was very excited for a faction war. There have been some strong moments, but I feel that in leaning so heavily into the big, shocking, trailer-worthy moments, they have focused so much on a small number of questionably written characters that they've essentially made no attempts to make the player feel personally engaged in the war. Now, look, I just don't think the Blizzard have the writing chops to pull off what they've tried to do here. I think what Blizzard tends to do a lot better is things that are big and cheesy. It's stuff like Sargeras, the type of thing that's grand in concept and scale, so that the focus is less on creating really deep characters the players love, and it's more in creating an interesting scenario for the world in which players live. Now, that's the strength of an MMO. Tight character narratives are more the domain of like a cinematic single-player game, and I think Blizzard have been trying to put a square peg into a round hole. Well, they said in the Q&A that the Battle for Azeroth B plot will be more important in 8.2, and I really take this as a good thing because I think they can pull that one off a lot better. Big, spooky tentacle monsters that are going to corrupt the planet to usher in the end of the universe. That's big, it's dumb, it's fun, it's cheesy, but more importantly, it's focused on creating an engaging scenario for the world with characters acting as archetypes or concepts that players can identify and rally behind. In a way, it reminds me of a D&D or Warhammer sourcebook, where it's really more about spelling out the place for your adventures to take place in, rather than, having your character tag along to view the dramatization of a novel. Like, Uncharted 4 could do that because of their amazing execution, but Blizzard less so in an MMO. So yeah, I think the Faction War is a bit of a slip-up. I think it was told kind of like a disconnected novel. I think there was never really a focus on telling the story through the worlds of mechanics, at least until, say, the assaults came in, and they just didn't really sell the feeling of you being a soldier in a day-to-day war. I think that with Rise of Ashara, you've got a classic villain, you've got a looming Lovecraftian threat, you've got the corruption of Azeroth. That just provides a more engaging backdrop for the gameplay in my view. Now, it's probably not going to be packed with tearjerkers, but I think it might be a better stage for players to craft their own story. So there you go, that's really a lot of my thoughts with patch 8.2. You've got big Azerite changes that, look, if they hold up to what Ian said in that Q&A, then there's a high chance that I could genuinely be totally okay with the system and be finding it quite enjoyable, especially when it is coming on top of the 8.1 changes. On the narrative, I think we're going into something the Blizzard could pull off a little bit better than what they're kind of doing right now. And on the world content, it was just so nice to hear Blizzard talk about those things, and it really did feel like they were speaking to some of my concerns when they talked about that in BlizzCon. And as for the other things, Mechagon looks really fun. Big new dungeon, that'll be really fun as well. It actually seems that with Nazjatar and Mechagon, a new dungeon, a new raid, a bunch of other stuff, it does seem like there's a lot of content in this patch. And I think what's maybe more important to me is that there's a lot of new content, but they seem to be saying that it's going to feel different in design. And that really is what the game needs. And that's why I think that 8.2 might actually feel more expansionary than Battle for Azeroth did, at least in a few regards. Obviously, Battle for Azeroth was an expansion in that it gave us 2 continents that are both awesome, like with Kulturas being just absolutely beautiful. But yeah, some problems. So that's my thoughts on 8.2. I'm actually quite excited. I'm quite looking forward to it. I really want to hop onto the PTR, and I mean, I do go into it being sad about the state of the game, but being kind of hopeful. And, for me, the best possible outcome is that I go onto PTR and I get to share with all of you that there's really good stuff that's happening. That's absolutely my personal sort of, desire for 2019, I suppose. So there you go. That's my thoughts on 8.2 and its potential. I'd love to hear what you have to say about this patch, and just what you think about, how things could turn around given the stuff that they seemingly have, they've said in no uncertain terms about this patch. So let me know. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.